Memories of 1963 come back to life for so many Americans today. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy shocked and some think changed the world.
News 13's John Lee gives us a local tie to that tragedy.
Did a little research on just who this character was.
At the place where those who pass rest in peace. One grave at Green Hill Cemetery in Waynesville is a reminder of America's turmoil, where folks like Steve Fogg find it fascinating that
we have a little bit of the JFK assassination story right here in our backyard.
William Greer was a World War II veteran, eventually working with the Secret Service.
Driving JFK in Dallas 50 years ago.
A life journey that merged with a devastating death.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Greer retired and eventually moved to Waynesville. Glenn Stewart says he heard stories of Greer playing golf at the country club.
You know, I was surprised to find out about that, and so that led to an interest in finding out where he's buried over here in Waynesville.
Glenn was told he rarely spoke of that assassination.
When it was brought up that he was pretty, closed-mouthed about it, he didn't want anybody to he didn't want to cause any more controversy, I'm sure.
We spoke to JFK expert Vince Palamara via Skype.
There's a lot of people that, rightly so in my opinion, believe that he is responsible indirectly for the assassination, because again, the Secret Service agents are trained. If he hits the gas and obeys an order of the agent in charge who was sitting next to him, history would have been different.
The author of Survivor's Guilt interviewed Greer's son about his late father, concluding that the Secret Service agent was tormented for years.
He had a lot of guilt about what happened in Dallas, because whether or not you believe Oswald acted alone or not, if his dad would have hit the gas, President Kennedy would be alive today.
Greer died of cancer in 1985, but speculation and conspiracy theories live on.
There's been a lot of controversy, and there's even some theory that he was involved in the killing.
Theories that Palamara says bothered the family.
His son was pretty forthcoming about his dad. He kind of wavered back and forth. I think his son, frankly, wasn't too thrilled about the notion out there that people thought that maybe he had something to do with it, as far as if he would have hit the gas and so forth. But I could kind of read between the lines. I could tell it was something that definitely bothered his father, judging by how defensive his son was about it.
And 5 decades after that turbulent and tragic chapter, many replay the horror in their minds.
And my thought is, this is going to go on forever, to the end of time.
Imagining what people like Bill Greer took to their grave.
I'm sure it haunted him, being where he was when he was.
In Waynesville, John Lee, News 13.
With in-depth study of the failings of Secret Service protections.
These men were sworn to protect the president, to dive in front of a bullet if need be, to sacrifice their body. And when the assassination begins, he orders the men not to move. 1963 protocol, President Kennedy should have lived.
This moving examination of new evidence and interviews uncovers the dramatic tale of a coup in Camelot.
Why didn't these agents do more to protect the man? And the more I looked into it, the more I realized there were a lot of anomalies, a lot of questions that needed to be answered on the subject.
No one has spent more time studying the Secret Service's actions that day than Vince Palamara.
Now, we've got some video from YouTube. One of the things you say in your book that made you want to write this book was all the conspiracy theories, and you talked about the movie from Oliver Stone. This is a man named Vince Palamara. Do you know him?
I'm familiar with him. I don't know him.
He says that, I guess, we'll talk about this, that he sent you a 22-page letter.
I recall receiving a letter which I sent back to him. I didn't bother with it.
You didn't talk to him ever?
He called me and I said hello, but that was about it.
And over the years, have you both been called about this assassination on many occasions?
I've been called numerous times. What's
been your attitude? How have you approached people that have
For the most part, I've just said I have no comment. I just have nothing to say.
And why is that?
Well, most of it's from people who are writing conspiracy theory books that don't make any sense to me. So if they're not going to deal in fact, then I don't want anything to do with it.
And how about you? What have you been?
Same thing. I have never talked to an author of a book, and I just felt we have it on our commission books, worthy of trust and confidence. And I felt those were issues that you should never talk to anybody on the outside about. And it was, I had to weigh and evaluate when I wrote this book, because I felt I wasn't talking about the Secret Service. I wasn't talking about the Kennedy family, but I was talking about the agents that I worked with and the incidents that occurred. And those were my friends, so that's what I decided to write.
Did you have to get permission to do this from the Secret Service?
No.
So this wasn't cleared by the Secret Service, this book? Okay.
No, but we had lunch today with the director of the Secret Service, who thanked us very much for our contribution. So.
Here is this video. It's not very long, and this man's name is Vince Palamara. He's a citizen who has taken it on his own to become an expert. He's from Pennsylvania, and I don't know him. I've never talked to him. I've just seen it on the web. And he is, I believe he's a graduate of Duquesne University. So let's watch this and I'll get your reaction to it.
Hi, this is Vince Palamara, the self-described Secret Service expert that Jerry Blaine accuses me of without naming me, okay? Back with my obsession about the Kennedy detail. I gotta read this. This is rich. Page 287. This is what Blaine's claiming Riley said. Riley turned to Jerry Blaine. And Jerry, since you were in the lead car, did you ever hear this over your radio as well? Yes, sir, I did. I heard exactly what Floyd just told you. The thing about this is the whole thing about the Ivy League charlatans thing. Jerry Blaine told me the Ivy League charlatans thing came from the guys. I can't remember who said it. Boy, his memory got real good 5 years later, because now he's claiming he heard it over the radio, Floyd Boring, okay? Just unbelievable. It's just amazing to me, you know? There never would have been a book if I didn't send a 22-page letter, okay, to Clint Hill that pissed him off so much that his very good friend Jerry Blaine came out with this book as a counter, okay? There's some nice things I recommend everybody to buy. I'm not into censorship. This is my First Amendment rights, okay? It's got some nice pictures, some nice non-assassination things, and there's even some good assassination-related things in here. But it's very obvious. Other people picked up on it. That's why there's some really bad reviews on Amazon right now. Mine's the best of a bunch of 3 stars, too. It's very obvious it's a thinly veiled attempt to rewrite history and to blame President Kennedy without trying to blame him for his own assassination.
First of all, his is not the best of the reviews. There are 7 with 5 stars, just in case for the record, that I saw today when I looked on Amazon. What's your reaction? Could you hear?
Well, he wrote an assessment of the book about the first time about 5 weeks before it was released. The second time on Amazon.com, he and 4 of his friends, or 4 of his aliases, put a statement on assessing the book a 1, a 2, and a 3. My assessment of Mr. Palamara is that he called probably all of the agents, and what agent who answers a phone is going to answer a question, was President Kennedy easy to protect? Well, probably he was too easy to protect because he was assassinated. But the fact that the agents aren't going to tell him anything, and he alludes to the fact that when I wrote the book, most of these people were dead. Well, I worked with these people. I knew them like brothers, and I knew exactly what was going on. And I always respected Jim Rowley because he stood up to the issue and said, look, we can't say the president invited himself to be killed, so let's squash this. So that was the word throughout the Secret Service. And Mr. Palamara, there are a number of things that have happened, but he has no credibility. He's a self-described expert in his area, which I don't know what it is. He was born after the assassination, and he keeps creating solutions to the assassination until they're proven wrong. So he's
a lot about, go ahead.
He alleges that because he sent me a letter, 22 pages in length apparently, and that I discussed that with Jerry, I forgot that I ever got a 22-page letter from this particular individual until I heard him say it on TV. And I never discussed it with Jerry or anybody else because it wasn't important to me. And insofar as him being an expert, I don't know where the expert part came from. I spent a long time in the Secret Service in protection, and I'm not an expert, but apparently he became an expert somewhere up in Pennsylvania. I don't know where.
You were about to say something earlier.
The Zapruder film, when the Zapruder film is run at normal speed, another theme that Palamara throws out is that Bill Greer stopped the car. When it's run at its normal speed, you'll notice the car absolutely does not stop at all. This happened in less than 6 seconds after the president was hit in the throat and moving along. Then,
as an aside, by the way, the fellow we talked about in the last interview, Vince Palamara,
yeah.
You've seen his letter to the about your book?
I've not read it, no.
I'm sure you probably know that he said that Mrs. Kennedy and Me is highly recommended to everyone for its honesty and rich body of truth. He actually fully endorsed your book, even though he's been critical of...
Well, I'll accept his endorsement.
Are you worried that he's being...
Well, maybe he has some secret agenda, I don't know, but I accept his praise. Thank you.
In your...
Jerry and I talked about this a lot because I'd read something or read reports and I'd say, Jerry, this contradicts what you're telling me or what Clint is telling me. And I came to realize that these were the guys that were there. And their memories are so vivid and so clear. And as I would talk to other agents, they would corroborate the stories. And I realized that this is the truth. And the other people that are writing these other reports and all these researchers that have studied this endlessly, they weren't there. And, you know, so you can take some of what is written, but what I believe is what these men have told me to be true.
The greatest security ever, even the normal security on both the federal and local levels had been stripped away.
Another short one for you, another 4-minute DVD. But what I want to do is, again, it's one thing to come up here and espouse things, say things, and that, but picture says 1,000 words, and it's the great conundrum. Now, I said before, you know, about a conspiracy, no conspiracy, and it's separate from that. It's a matter of these guys would have protected the president. He would have lived whether Oswald acted alone or not. There is a little bit of a gray area in there. And it depends, quite frankly, sometimes it depends on my mood or if some of my researcher friends work on me a little bit to make me think it is sinister. I don't know. I mean, you try to put the best foot forward and say they screwed up and the president was killed under their watch. And after the fact, they created this mythology that he was difficult to protect. And that's when you read William Manchester's massive best-selling book. It sold like in the millions, you know, day Kennedy was shot, even the Warren Report to a certain extent, laid out this thing that, well, President Kennedy, that's a shame, but, you know, he did not want, you know, protection. Now, you didn't hear me get into the bubble top. That does seem to be something that Kennedy didn't want all the time, but even that is a gray area. There's many trips, you'll see a couple of them coming up, where he had the bubble top on, if not in a full compartment, which he did quite often. A lot of other times he'd have it in a partial configuration where he'd have the rear piece on and the forward piece. Now, even though it was not bulletproof, it would deflect a bullet, and many of the agents I spoke to said it would deflect a bullet, or at the very least, actually two things, or it would have a sun's glare off the bubble would act as a deterrent, or just the fact that many people thought it was bulletproof. What a potential sniper or snipers think twice, if not thrice, about doing anything. Oh, the bubble top's on, or the rear piece is on. So there you go. Many times, you'll see coming up, Kennedy was allotted many motorcycles that surrounded the car. It was protocol. In fact, on the Texas trip, San Antonio, Houston, and that morning in Fort Worth, the morning of the assassination, he had motorcycles all over the place. In the House Select Committee, this is kind of, well, it's not buried, researchers know about it, but it's buried in their report. Most people know about the Warren Report. House Select Committee reinvestigated the assassination in the late 70s and found a probable conspiracy, but very inconclusive, very unsatisfying. But one of the things they found was it was, quote, uniquely insecure what the Secret Service did with the allotment of motorcycles. And guess what? They blamed it on Kennedy. They said, hey, Kennedy didn't like this noise of the motorcycles by him. He couldn't have conversation. Gee, it must have been a new thing, because he didn't mind having his motorcycles all around him, up to and including the morning of the murder. He gets to Dallas. Hey, I want to hear now. Hey, get these motorcycles away. Hey, I didn't mind the agents beside me here. Oh, get them away now. And yeah, the press and photographers, you wouldn't need Abraham Zapruder. Normally, the press and photographers were in front, and you'll see in a second. Again, pictures, you don't have to believe me, you'll see for your own. The vantage point, a lot of times there was a flatbed truck in front of the motorcade to capture. They would have the national and international press, or just like the local press and the photographers capturing the motorcade. You wouldn't need all these amateurs. They were moved at the last minute. Tom Dillard even testified to the Warren Commission that left them in Chevrolet convertibles that put them totally out of the picture, literally, because they were stuck way back in the motorcade. They didn't even know what happened until it was too late. If they would have been in front, they would have been filming. Hey, and they would have saw everything. Again, you might say, what's motorcycles got to do? If it was a sniper, it's a sniper. No. What it was, there would have been more professional witnesses to cover. Now, they would have covered them on the sides. Yes, you're right from the sniper's perspective. But if agents, now the Secret Service has even admitted this. So it isn't like, oh, this is your theory about what they would have done. Louis Moretti testified in the late 90s about this, okay? That if agents would have been on the back of the car, it would have obscured Oswald's view. So agents being there would have been very important. Again, so it's their own words. But again, before anyone thought twice about this, they would throw out, well, President Kennedy, God bless him, it's a shame, but he didn't want this protection. But as you see, he didn't have a problem at all. And I'm contacting these people. And here's the most important thing of all, especially if you go out and you get Gerald Blaine's book, which I'm not, espousing, but it's free country, get it if you want. And if you go in there and you read and you say, well, we had a code, he's talking about the Secret Service, and, that code shouldn't be broken. And, I'm waiting 47 years to tell you that President Kennedy did indeed order us out the car, and we covered this up. The thing he left out of the book, the real glaring error is, what about the non-Secret Service agents that said President Kennedy never ordered us the car? Dave Powers, who was on every trip Kennedy took, he was riding in the follow-up car often, writes to a total stranger and says, they never had to be told to get off the back of the car. Congressman Sam Givens, again, total stranger, writing to him, said that the agents rode on the rear of the car all the way. He was sitting a foot away from Kennedy. He never heard any order. So I'll wrap this up.
I heard 3 loud.
From his hometown of Duluth in Minnesota, one of those questioning critics of the official version of events is Professor James Fetzer.
The resurgence of interest in the death of JFK had repercussions when Congress passed the JFK Records Act in 1992 that created a 5-civilian-member board entrusted with the responsibility to review and declassify documents that were held by the CIA, the Secret Service, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and so forth. We know from its own report that it had some significant failures. For example, and the Secret Service, which deliberately destroyed motorcade records that would have revealed that the motorcade in Dallas was a travesty, a violation of at least 15 different Secret Service policies for presidential protection. This behavior on their part raises the most serious and disturbing questions about their complicity in the entire affair.
From the moment he arrived in Dallas, the president's protection was suspect, according to Vince Palamara, a Secret Service expert.
There was last-minute changes invoked by the Secret Service involving President Kennedy's security. Specifically, agents were told not to ride on or near the rear of the limousine. Now, these orders were funneled from the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the White House detail, who was the planner of the Texas trip, Floyd Boring, to one of his assistants, a shift leader by the name of Emory Roberts, who was in charge of the follow-up car. You can see an agent, Henry Ribka, doing his normal duty, jogging beside the limousine, when in the follow-up car, you can see Emory Roberts stand up and wave him back, and you can see a very perplexed Agent Ribka waving his arms in the air several times in seeming disgust. There was another last-minute change made at Love Field, invoked by the Secret Service. The Dallas Police Department motorcycle outriders were told not to be beside the car. It went from 4 to 6 down to a measly 2 riders on each side. And to add insult to injury, they were pushed further back in the motorcade by those agents not being by the car, by those motorcycle officers not being in their position. It opened up President Kennedy to a field of fire from in front and from the rear.
In the months before the trip to Texas, there had been a growing number of threats against the president's life.
Despite the increase in conspiratorial activity in the month of November 1963, in the apparent red alert the Secret Service appears to be under in response to this activity, the agency acts in the opposite fashion and actually reduces the security and acts like no threats on the president's life are occurring. Why?
Uniquely on that day in Dallas, the press, the camera crews, Kennedy's military aide, who would normally sit in the front of the president's car, and even his personal physician were all relegated to the rear of the motorcade by the Secret Service.
In a conventional motorcade, the president would be somewhere in the middle, surrounded by security and the press. In this case, the presidential limousine was set right out in front of every other limousine, which of course is the reason why the Secret Service destroyed the records of its own motorcades when they were asked for them by the Assassination Records Review Board.
The most suspicious behavior by shift leader Emery Roberts was to be at the time of the shooting in Dealey Plaza.
Tragically, he actually ordered the agents not to move during the heart of the shooting. Agent Sam Kinney, who drove the follow-up car, admitted as much to me and told me, quote, exactly right, end quote. And all these deficiencies begin and end with the Secret Service, because they were the prime movers. They were the ones who were directing the security arrangements from Washington up to and including in the heart of Dallas during security meetings. They were the ones that gave out assignments, vetoed or approved of security arrangements. So the buck stops with them.
I have a book coming out called Survivor's Guilt, The Secret Service and the Failure to Protect President Kennedy. It is the first time the Secret Service has ever been investigated and researched in such depth. Hundreds of footnotes and it's primary source information. It's not theories, it's fact. It's what these agents told me. It's what they said and did. It's based off films and photos, documentable evidence, documents, books, whatnot. But it's not just secondary sources, it's not theory, it's fact. It's what these agents told me. Survivor's Guilt, The Secret Service and the Failure to Protect the President, coming out September 1st, 2013, available for pre-order on Amazon.com.
Everything is being accepted as far as what PPD is doing and will continue to do.
News footage was black and white then, but several amateur photographers caught the motorcade on color film. Channel 4 had 2 reporters along the route. Bob Huffaker was downtown.
In response to political staff, agents who usually surround the limousine were pulled away so people could see the president better. One reacted by throwing up his hands in disgust. 3 times he protested, what would prove to be a fatal error. Kennedy was killed by the 3rd shot from a sniper rifle, well after agents, if they had been nearby. Agents who usually surround the limousine were pulled away so people could see the president better. One reacted by throwing up his hands in disgust. 3 times he protested, what would prove to be a fatal error. Kennedy was killed by the 3rd shot from a sniper rifle, well after agents, if they had been nearby.
I interviewed a guy called Clint Hill, who was the bodyguard. If you see the footage of the cavalcade and the bullets coming, he's the guy that jumps on the back.
Yep.
He was Jackie Kennedy's bodyguard. Jumped on and
Why weren't Secret Service on the bumper that day? They were removed. You can go on internet.
That's not what he told me.
They were removed from the bumper.
That's
and the Secret Service guy turns to his boss and goes, "What?"
Jesse, here's my point.
And they took him off the bumper. Why did they change the way that? For Dallas only, the way the motorcycles were lined up. They put 4 of them way in front and the others all behind. They didn't go in the standard wedge, which was used in the 2 previous days before. But in Dallas, that changed. They got him out of the way to give a clear shooting lane.
Let me finish my point. Clint Hill, who was there and was on the back of that limo,
he wasn't on the back of it.
He jumped on the back of it.
Yeah, from a car way behind, and it took him how long to get there.
But he believed Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Now, why do you know more than he does?
Well, because of the fact there's a whole lot of information. There is so obvious when you read this book. I'll let you people be the judge. Read the book. It's so obvious. The Secret Service.
Who do you think did it?
The Secret Service protected Kennedy more after death than they did when he was alive, because they illegally took the body out of Texas. Autopsy by law should have gone on there. Lyndon Johnson, the car was a crime scene. Everybody knows tape goes around a crime scene until forensic gets through with it. Monday morning, that car was in Michigan being refurbished, already moved. No one was allowed to see the car.
The most painful theories point fingers at the agents themselves.
I read where Pontius was part of it because he disappeared after Houston. A conspiracy for the agents to shoot the president. I mean, this is off the wall.
One of the agents shot him.